I'm Eto Buziashvili, and I work as a research associate at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. Today, I'm here with Mr. Toomas Hendrik Ilves, former president of Estonia and now distinguished fellow at CIPA, for an exclusive interview, part of DFL Lab's Coffee Break series. Welcome, Mr. Ilves.
Oh, good to see you. Good to be here.
So let's open up with a very direct question. Is the West winning or losing the information confrontation with Russia?
Well, I think we have to start from first principles that it's a completely asymmetric conflict. There is virtually nothing the West can do to manipulate the domestic policies or the outcome of elections in countries that do not have free and fair elections. I mean, as basic as that. So obviously, the adversaries the enemies of open society, to use the Karl Popper term, they're at a distinct advantage because you're not going to change political outcomes in those countries. The best you can do is perhaps inform them of what is genuinely happening, but you are not going to, I mean, it's not a symmetric conflict or a symmetrically adversarial relationship. That means that we are only in a defensive position. There is really nothing else to do but to be defensive. And let us admit, we are fortunately, I would say, hamstrung by our own democratic principles, so we don't engage in censorship. The best we can do is take down the things that we have noticed, but then again, that's not very effective always. I mean, we have the additional problem of, as it's become clear, much of the disinformation is actually spread by our own citizens who have been, as it were, seeded. You know, they're willing or unwilling participants in this, but they get something that is extremely, I mean, it's wrong or false, but emotional, and they will spread it. So much of the spread actually comes from ourselves. So I would say, yeah, we're losing pretty badly if we only look at that picture of who's doing what and how well we're responding. And so, I mean, this is true, of course, of Russia and Iran. In the case of China, I think, where of course we've seen less disinformation from China. On the other hand, they are completely closed to Western outlets. So we can hope kind of the passive response of providing genuine information is something that maybe has some effect in Russia. And so in a word, we're not doing well.
In your experience, what can democratic governments do to hold hostile state actors accountable for the international spread of disinformation? For example, from poisoning of Navalny and Skripal to COVID-related disinformation to anti-Western propaganda, what could EU governments do when the Kremlin openly denies facts?
Well, I've long argued that, in fact, if you're facing an asymmetric conflict, then you must respond asymmetrically. And so I mean, let's be honest, no one wants to go on vacation in Russia, all right? So, I mean, what are our asymmetrical instruments? Well, we can actually just really cut back on visas. We can confiscate property that in any way has been illegally acquired through money laundering or anonymous shell companies. I mean, I would say isolate and stew in your own little system there. But right now, I mean, first you steal money, and then you go and take the money and buy yourself, you know, a condo in Miami or something in San Moritz, go on vacation in San Moritz, go to school in the best universities paid for with monies, our asymmetric abilities to deny them access to our countries. Fortunately, the issue of visa-free travel for Russians has really been taken off the table after the annexation of Crimea, but even after the invasion of Georgia, the Russian Foreign Ministry was continuously pushing this, and only a few of us were against it, such as my country when I was president.
Bad actors use anonymity and inauthentic accounts to spread disinformation and poison informed debates online. However, there have been instances of a good use of anonymity on social media, for example, when used by journalists to protect themselves from abuse, intimidation, and bullying from authoritarian regimes, or various examples of anonymous accounts that employ satire to expose everyday injustices from authoritarian forces, like, for example, infamous Twitter accounts of Darth Putin. What is your take on the use of anonymity on social media, and how should platforms go about it?
Well, I'm not sure that democracy will survive anonymity as it exists right now. And I would actually like to see kind of a bifurcation of platforms, so that there is a Twitter for people who have been genuinely identified with no kind of anonymous or pseudonymous names. So you know who is who, and so people take responsibility for what they say. And then another one, which is will be kind of like the New York Post of social media. I mean, yeah, it could be fun, and of course there'll be all kinds of things there, but it will still be from that kind of channel, whereas something where people are identifiable. I mean, this is basically, it's the social media version of Gresham's law that says bad money drives out the good, which usually leads to inflation. I would say we have the same thing when it comes to social media, that the bad information drives out the good. So I would basically chop them in half. And then you have the good Twitter, and then you have the crap Twitter. I mean, that would be, I think, would make life a lot easier. And then, I mean, if you're there under your own name, identifiable as who you are, then you will get responsible discussions. Well, less irresponsible discussions than you do now.
As shown by studies and analysis, social media companies play a crucial role in the electoral and democratic processes taking place all over the world. Disinformation, extremist and manipulative content, and broad influence operations led the public and regulatory bodies to exhort companies to improve their content moderation policies. How serious is the threat of social networks being used to undermine the integrity of elections and democracy? And what about the tech giants, what they should do to change their self-regulatory approach? You recently joined what is called the Real Facebook Oversight Board. Can you please explain our audience what is a board and what it is intended to accomplish?
Well, to take it in reverse order, I mean, there are a large number of very sort of serious people dealing with issues of disinformation and bad behavior by social media companies that finally banded together to actually raise issues, no longer as simply as individuals, but as a broader group that is in the hope that we have more clout that way. And of course, we see it has been fairly threatening to Facebook, because they immediately sent an attack dog. I mean, instead of all the happy talk that you get from one hacker way, and it was like it was a troll himself, but representing Facebook. So it kind of shows that they're perhaps not taking it so well. But on the other hand, I mean, this is what you get. This is life. I mean, if you're going to act in a certain way that upsets a lot of people, don't be surprised if you start getting pushback. It will not only be the governments that push back on you, and if you get a broad range of people from Carol Lowiter to Roger Mac Nemei and Kara Swisher, I mean, these are people who have clout. And if they're together, they have even more clout. I mean, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so I think that this was a very useful thing. Now, on the threat of social networks to undermine the integrity of elections, well, I think we've seen already from 2016 how massive that can be. And we know that, you know, in the opposite direction, the defensive maneuver or prophylactic maneuver on the part of the Macron campaign in May of 2017, of course, prevented the spread of fake news and probably had a very positive effect on the outcome. I don't think that tech companies will change their ways until the threat of regulation becomes strong enough. It's not there yet, but it may eventually between Europe and the United States, the primary areas that they're in. But so far, I mean, the company, especially Facebook, has been incredibly irresponsible socially. From, you know, the Myanmar military exhorting citizens to genocide, to allowing all kinds of hate speech go unregulated. I mean, this is all of those things really are causing more and more of a reaction, and you know, this can't last forever. This unregulated bliss that they enjoy, those things will end up being regulated. When is a different question, but that is coming one way or another.
While battling the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, the world's citizens and institutions have been targeted by massive infodemic cyber attacks, both state-sponsored and non-phishing emails, scams, and other criminal behavior. How should we protect our vital services and critical infrastructure against adversaries using cyber and digital capabilities to attack us? Since something like Geneva Convention for Digital and Cyber Crimes doesn't exist, how should these crimes be punished?
See, I'm worried about the sort of that convention part, because, you know, we already have the Budapest Convention on cybercrime already for 15 years or so. But the key perpetrators of cybercrime have not acceded to it. I mean, Russia is the biggest source of cybercrime. It's not a member of it because it foresees that if you have engaged or if you are identified as being a cyber criminal, then you will extradite that criminal to the country where the crime has been committed. But Russia has not acceded to it. So we have to think about this differently. First of all, clearly on things such as vital services and critical infrastructure, we have to harden our systems considerably against all kinds of attacks. And while many countries, most countries, at least from Georgia to Japan and South Korea, have in fact hardened their systems, their critical infrastructure, electrical and water systems, have taken measures to deal with that, then certainly, you know, there's much more we need to do. Clearly, we see with this spate of ransomware attacks on hospitals, which is also, to my mind, critical infrastructure. I mean, we need to have far better defenses in against cyber attacks and ransomware, especially in our healthcare systems. And so they need to spend money on it. It's, you know, you have to create new systems. It's not enough to have the simple, stupid system of an email address and a simple password. I mean, there are genuine technical solutions that will help you. Two-factor authentication, end-to-end encryption, allowing only people who have a clear identity, chip-based, into the system will cut out most of the problems. Interestingly enough, one of the weakest countries in this regard is actually the United States, which has not really focused on critical infrastructure other than sort of the military, electrical, energy side of things, but hospitals, I mean, they don't really have any real protections. I mean, the best they do is they get malware detection that really tells you after the fact that you've got a virus in your system.
Great. This is all. Thank you very much, Mr. Ilves, for your very interesting answers and for the great interview.